Hi, I'm Dr. Garry Palmer of Sportstest, and this week I wanted to really continue on a bit of a theme. It's a question that I've asked a lot of my athletes: what are you training for? What's your goals? What's your aims? We've spoken about it briefly before, but I want to cover it again this week. So let's start off by thinking, I'm a cyclist. Right, okay, that's great, but what are you actually trying to achieve? Well, I'm sure a lot of you out there want to be the absolute ultimate all-rounder. You want to be good at everything. The problem is when you come to put your training plan together, and one week you're doing a time trial, then you're riding a mountain bike race, then you're doing a cyclocross race, then you're trying to do a triathlon at the weekend, and there's a running race you fancy doing midweek. That's more than an all-rounder. You need to think about a focus. You need to get that focus set in. So we take the example of the all-rounder and say, well, surely when we look at the sprinter's not just the sprinter. The sprinter also has to get to the end of the race in order to be able to sprint. So again, there is a certain element of crossover that the athlete needs. But we talk about someone like Cav being a sprinter. But who's the sprinter now? What Hoy needs is totally different to what Cav needs, but Cav also needs to be able to get through a 200k race to be able to sprint for the last 100 metres. Likewise, Wiggins needs to be good at all of it. So really what you need to think about is, what are you trying to target? And whatever you're trying to target, it can cross over. So just as an example, nothing more than an example, if we consider them starting at the top, someone at time trials, okay, they've got a good strength, hopefully they've got a fairly good functional threshold power and a fairly good power to weight at threshold, therefore they should be quite good at climbing. But they might be too heavy to climb, so they're not going to necessarily make the best climber. Someone that climbs, you'd expect to have a good power to weight ratio. So someone with a good power to weight ratio can probably race reasonably well off-road because they can accelerate well. Someone that can accelerate well can probably sprint quite well. So then the sprinter, as well as doing a single sprint, may perform quite well at a crit. Now again, to a certain extent in crits, you need to be able to tolerate a huge amount of lactate for a good long period. Therefore, that makes you a good time trialer. So there are crossovers with the races that you may be trying to target, but the discipline and the focus of where you want to be a specialist alters, and that's where we've got to look at. Now, again, I'm using an example here of a cyclist, but exactly the same goes if you're a triathlete. Are you doing Ironman? Are you doing sprint distance? How are you on the bike? How are you on the run? How are you in the swim? Or if you're an out-and-out runner, are you trying to race over 5k? Are you trying to do a marathon? Are you trying to run cross country? All of the assets and the facets that that individual needs are totally different. And so, of course, I'm going to go back and I'm going to remind you of a presentation I did a few weeks ago. What factors affect your performance? We've got to look at engine size, type and tuning. We've got to look at technique. We've got to look at psychology. We've got to look at reaction time, efficiency, aerodynamics, weight, fuel, how you use it, how you burn it. On top of that, we need to look at your physiology to assess your physiological strengths and weaknesses. Because once we've assessed your physiological strengths and weaknesses, you can actually target the training and all the races that you're going to be good at. So rather than trying to be a jack of all trades and a master of none, I'd suggest you plan your training, you get some focus, and you succeed in what you're trying to achieve. Hopefully this has given you a bit of food for thought and something else to think about over the coming weeks of training. Good luck.